So recently, some big changes were announced by the city of Cleveland regarding the future of the West Side Market. And today we welcome Jessica Trivisonno to share more about what's to come. She serves in Mayor Bibb's administration as the senior strategist focusing on the West Side Market. She was Mayor Bibb's deputy transition manager, and prior to working for the mayor, Jessica was the economic development director at Detroit Shoreway Community Development Organization and Cadell Improvement, Inc., where she supported small business owners and commercial property owners in the Cadell, Detroit Shoreway, and Edgewater neighborhoods on Cleveland's near West Side. Additionally, Jessica was an associate at Walter Haverfield, LLP, where she focused her legal practice on municipal law and land use and zoning matters. She graduated from American University with an interdisciplinary bachelor's degree in communication, law, economics, and government, and she received her JD from Case Western Reserve School of Law. I am excited to turn it over to Jessica.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, everyone, for having me. So excited to chat with you all about West Side Market. Checking in, everyone can see my screen okay? Yes? Beautiful. Awesome. So thanks so much for that warm introduction. As I think probably a lot of you on the call have seen in the news or heard, West Side Market is kind of in the beginning phases of transitioning its operations to nonprofit management. So City of Cleveland will continue owning the market in perpetuity, but we're in the process of transitioning the market to a new nonprofit, which will be managing the market going forward, as long as everything goes sort of according to plan. So what I'm going to talk about today is sort of recapping how we got here, how this decision was made. I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits and challenges to nonprofit management of a public market like ours. I'm going to talk about the transition process. I'll tell you a bit more about Cleveland Public Market Corporation, which is the new entity set up to operate the market. And then I'll talk a bit about what's next and ways for you to engage with the market going forward. And then I'll answer any questions you have. So just to recap sort of how we got to where we are today, nonprofit operation of West Side Market is something that's been talked about in Cleveland for ages, right? It's been decades that people have brought up the management of the market, whether it should be the city managing it, another entity, et cetera. And I would say that it really came to a real head in 2012 when the market was celebrating its centennial, where a lot of people started talking about nonprofit management. Mayor Bibb said that he supported transitioning the market to a nonprofit operator on the campaign trail, committed to making the market one of his administration's top priorities, and hired me in January of last year and told me that my full-time gig is to think about the market day in, day out, which I have dutifully done. I don't spend a moment not thinking about the market since January of 2022. In July of 2022, we sort of officially announced that the intention is to transition the market to a nonprofit operator. Between January and July, we spent a lot of time talking to other public markets around the country to learn more about their operations, looking at what the best practices were, really investigating if this was the right approach for our market, and ultimately decided it is. We were able to hire Market Ventures, Inc., which is a national consultancy that focuses exclusively on public markets. Our consultant that we work with, Ted Spitzer, literally wrote the book about public markets. If he's been to another public market around the country, he's probably worked with them at some point or another. So we decided we didn't just want to sort of hand over the operations of the market without a really solid plan for how we could make sure that the market was stable and set up for success. And so we've been working really hard with a really amazing advisory committee made up of government officials, merchants, other neighborhood stakeholders and area stakeholders and experts to develop a master plan, which I'll talk about a bit in a future slide. And then just last month, we released the first phase of that master plan, and we announced the incorporation of Cleveland Public Market Corporation and that initial board. So that's sort of where we've been since January. I often get asked, why are we doing this? What are the benefits of nonprofit operation? And so I'll go through a couple of them. One is sort of this dual bottom line of a nonprofit. West Side Market has been government owned and government operated, always with sort of an eye towards public good, but never with a formal mission. And so being able to have a more formalized mission for West Side Market and being able to have metrics that track with that mission is one huge benefit for the market, but simultaneously also taking a bit more of a business-like approach to the operation of the market. The city has been providing subsidy to the market for the past about 10 years now to maintain its operations. And while I think that public markets are a civic good and that a city has a responsibility to maintain its public markets, I think there's also some ways that a nonprofit could alter the operations to have a little bit more of that business-like approach that would stabilize the market. In a similar vein, there's a lot of benefits to resource acquisition. I think a lot of people who have looked at the market in the past have talked to corporate and philanthropic partners who have said, we love the market. We don't want to give money to the city to help the market. We'd be way more interested in supporting a nonprofit that was tied to the market. So that's huge, right? That's a huge source of possible opportunity for the market, as well as sponsorships, grants, earned income, events, all are different ways for the market to diversify its sources of revenue. And then being able to hire development staff who really have the time and talent to devote to developing those resources for the market. Being able to have the market be a little bit more entrepreneurial. If any of you have ever tried to enter partnerships with the government, you might have found that governments don't like to take risks, and it can be a little bureaucratically challenging to have partnerships. So having something that is a little bit more flexible in a nonprofit partner, I think can really open up some opportunities for the market. And then there's the politics of it, right? Like being able to take rent setting out of the political process is really healthy for the market and something that other markets have found success in. There's also some leadership benefits. So similar with sort of the political piece, making sure that the market is insulated from the politics of who's in office and whether they want to devote the resources to the market at that given time. Having a nonprofit board as opposed to relying on political leadership for the market's ongoing success is, I think, a big stabilizer for the market. And also just being able to plan for some leadership transitions in the market in a different way. Then similarly with staff, just having the flexibility in incentivizing performance for staff, being able to pay appropriate wages similar to other public markets as opposed to other similar government entities. And then again, just sort of this leadership transition. And then finally, there are some things that we think a nonprofit can do better than the government can. Things like marketing the market. Governments aren't known for their marketing arms, integrating new technologies, flexibility in sort of the budget and expenditures are all reasons that we think it makes sense for the market to be operated by a nonprofit. That said, it's not, a panacea. There are some challenges to operating a market as a nonprofit. Other cities have found themselves in some financial trouble when their public markets are operated by a nonprofit. The city of Cleveland will always own the market, and it'll be the responsibility of the city to maintain that capital. But if you have, a global pandemic and that affects your bottom line, that can be really challenging for a nonprofit who doesn't have the same deep pockets as a government entity. And then in some cities that have made this transition, they've struggled with finding the right leadership for their board. So far, I can confidently say that we don't have that problem in Cleveland, that we have some really incredible leaders who have agreed to volunteer on our board, who have, put their hands up and said that they want to help with the market however they can. But that's, two of the challenges that we've seen in other markets that we're trying to plan around to make sure that we don't run into that here. So this is just sort of a timeline that we put together about the steps for making this transition. We put this together in July of 2022, and I'm very proud that we've pretty much stuck with it so far. So raising some funding to pay for the master planning that we're doing, selecting new board members, applying for tax exemption, applying for, doing all that governance type work, working on developing an operating agreement between the city and this new nonprofit is what we're really focused on right now. We are in the midst of an executive director search, so that job is available on, it's posted on the mayor's website. I'll give you a link at the end. If anybody is interested or knows of anybody who'd be a great candidate for this position, I think it's an awesome opportunity. And then we'll be looking at sort of the operating tools for the new nonprofit and hoping to make this transition by the end of this year. But we don't want to, like I said, just make the transition without giving this new entity anything to work with. So we are working really carefully to create a master plan for Westside Market. On the screen, I have 3 different plans that have come up in the last 10 years, or have been developed in the last 10 years. So this is not the first plan that's been developed for the market, but I hope it's one of the last, at least for a while. These plans have been really helpful as foundations for sort of where we need to go with the market. What we're developing now is more of an implementation plan. So we started with our first phase where we focused on research and really assessing the market. So before we got to the stuff that everyone always asks me about, which is like, what's going to change? Where is the seating going to be? Is there going to be more prepared foods? We had to really focus on who are the customers? What does the merchants need? How are we going to support the market? What are best practices at other markets? Because we don't want to just recommend a bunch of changes without that really important research base to make those recommendations on. So that was the first phase, which we released last month and is available online for anybody interested. We're now in our second phase of master planning, which is thinking about more of the stuff that everyone always asks about. So what does the produce arcade look like, and how do we address vacancy, and what types of small businesses should we be attracting to the market, and what type of programs do we need to support those small businesses in the community around the market? So that's what we're working on right now. And then the final piece of that will be the management and financial plan. So what is all of the infrastructure that needs to be put in place to make all of those other pieces of the plan possible? So this is just kind of what the plan looks like. Like you said, it's online if you want to take a look. It's an easy 60 pages to read. So that's sort of the what. Now this is the who. So we are really excited that Cleveland Public Market Corporation was officially formed last month. This organization was formed sort of in partnership with the Westside Market Advisory Committee and with input from the mayor's office. These are our initial 15 board members. So we'll have this board, and then the board is going to be advised by 3 committees. So one thing that the board is working on right now is developing sort of what's that pipeline for bringing more stakeholders into those committees. So we'll have a committee focused on merchant relations, one on facilities, and one on community engagement. And the intention is for those committees to include merchants, issue area experts, sort of all of an all hands on deck type situation to provide advice back up to that board for their final decision making. So in the last year, I've been really lucky that so many people have reached out and said that they want to help with the market. And this is going to be that opportunity to really help with the market. So I'm looking forward to bringing even more people on board. And then I just wanted to share with you really quickly the vision, values, and mission for Cleveland Public Market Corporation. So this was developed through the advisory committee, adopted by the board at their very first meeting last week. So the vision for the market is or the vision for the organization is, what do they want Westside Market to be like? And they want Westside Market to bring joy as an authentically Cleveland place to shop from local food entrepreneurs. The focus here is on diverse, thriving, and independent businesses, that we have well-preserved and maintained facilities, that the market's a vibrant and welcoming place, and that the market plays a central role in the regional food system. The values identified for the market are really focused on diversity, opportunity. Authenticity is such a big thing, and it's so hard to pin down, but it's so much what makes the market special, is that there's something about it that's just authentic, and we never want to lose that. The nonprofit will have a big focus on food access and education, and sustainability, community building and engagement, and then fiscal responsibility and professionalism. And then the mission for Cleveland Public Market Corporation is that it strives to make Westside Market the nation's premier public market by meeting the evolving needs of merchants, customers, and the community. CPMC preserves the city's public market tradition while making the local food system more accessible, equitable, and diverse. So that's kind of my really quick 15 minutes, and we can barely get into, all of the amazingness that is nonprofit operation of Westside Market. So with that in mind, we have a whole separate series of conversations that you can go to. So starting next week, there's a City Club panel that will be moderated by Mayor Bibb and will include leaders from the public markets in Cincinnati, Detroit, and Baltimore to talk about kind of the roles that their public markets have in their communities. And then that kicks off a series of an additional 6 other events. It's about 1 a month from now until September, all focusing on different topics. So we'll talk about women's entrepreneurship in April. We'll talk about sort of the history of Cleveland's public markets. There used to be 3 public markets in Cleveland. We're down to 1, and kind of the amazing architecture in the market. We'll talk about food access. We'll talk about culinary inspiration and how Westside Market has affected the culinary scene in Cleveland. We'll talk about climate resiliency and then minority-owned businesses within the market. So all of those will be sort of hour-long speaker panels that will delve into each of those topics. And then finally, if you want to learn more about the market and what we're doing beyond this quick conversation, if you go to the mayor's website, mayor.clevelandohio.gov, and go to the Westside Market Initiative, you'll get a ton of information, including that executive director job posting, the phase 1 report, and then links to all of our advisory committee meetings are recorded and posted. So if you want to spend some time watching those advisory committee meetings and really getting into the weeds, you're welcome to do that. And then my contact information is also up here. So with that, I'm happy to answer some questions.
Jessica, great. Thank you so much. We certainly have had a few questions come in. So let's start with kind of thinking a little bit more about the process of deciding to go the nonprofit route. Did you look at leaving the market as a city asset, but setting up a parallel foundation to really support what could have been, that nonprofit piece to attract funding for its maintenance and upkeep?
Yeah, so there are a couple markets that are, so first of all, I'll say the Westside Market will be a city asset. It will be, owned by the city in perpetuity and will be leased and managed by Cleveland Public Market Corporation. So that's not changing. There are some cities that have sort of a for-profit operator and then a nonprofit arm that sort of does some of that fundraising and grant making ability. I did not see any cities that had sort of city staff managing the market and then a nonprofit piece, doing that philanthropic support for the market or doing the maintenance. I think that there'd be a lot of challenges around sort of who's reporting to who and how to kind of go through all those operations.
You've mentioned looking to other cities. What are some of those cities that you look to learn about their public market management?
Yeah, there's no other city that I would say is like a copy-paste replica for Westside Market, right? Every public market is different. Every city is different. Findlay Market in Cincinnati made the transition from city operation to nonprofit operation in 2004. And that's one of the more recent ones. A lot of cities made this switch in like the 80s. And so they don't quite have the same institutional knowledge of what this was like. The only other cities that still have sort of like city-owned and operated markets are New York has one operated by their like Economic Development Authority. Indianapolis has one that's in a similar transition to ours, where they're not quite sure what the future holds for them. And then some cities like Milwaukee just built a new public market in the past in the last 10 years. And they have a nonprofit or their business improvement district operating their market. I talked to 24 public markets about their various different operating models. So there's all sorts to learn from all the different markets.
As this news has rolled out over the past few months, what has been the responses of the vendors and also from kind of the surrounding community there in Ohio City?
Yeah, I would say that the response from vendors is they're cautiously optimistic. Vendors are, this is their livelihood. This is how they put food on the table. It's often a multi-generational business, and they have really deep ties to the market and are really invested in the future of the market. So they're scared, but excited about sort of what comes next. Scared about change and sort of not knowing what the future holds, but also excited that there's some real opportunity for them to have input and to really think about the future of the market together. That said, that there's 70 different small businesses that operate in the market, so I never want to generalize and say that all the vendors feel one thing, because that's never going to be the case. So that's sort of generally the vendors cautiously optimistic. I would say that the community response has been overwhelmingly positive and has mostly just been like a finally, right? Like we've been asking for this for ages. It's finally happening, and mostly just a push for, can we do this sooner? How fast can this happen?
And as you've been on these listening tours and hearing what those who are the stakeholders are interested in, can you speak broadly to what kind of changes are vendors, customers, the community pushing for?
Yeah, it's similarly a bit hard to generalize. I would say vendors are really focused on things that customers don't see. So it's having HVAC, because they are there all day in all temperatures, and having air conditioning is really important to people for their working environment, right? So that's really important to vendors. It's things like making sure that they have spaces in the basement that are accommodating to modern butchery. So again, not something that customer sees, but really important to vendors. Having freight elevators that work consistently, because they're constantly bringing goods upstairs to downstairs. So vendors are really focused on the facility and sort of the, overall just usability and functionality of the facility. I would say customers, we often hear about wanting the market to be full and be sort of full with vendors, various different products. We hear a lot from people who want more prepared food in the market. So things that they can go buy and eat right there. That's a real kind of thinking about how we do that without challenging like that authentic, fresh grocery feel of the market is really like a big challenge, and one that we're solving for and will be solving for throughout the master plan. People want a place to eat. People want to drink a beer at the market. Like I hear those all of the time. So it's just balancing all of those sort of interests and needs with still keeping the market authentic and, what makes it so special to Cleveland.
How do the roles of the current city employees working with the market change after this transition?
Yeah, so there are pretty limited staff at the market right now who are doing incredibly heavy lifts, each of them. Our market has 3 professional staff in the office and then 3 sort of maintenance staff. Similarly sized markets are closer to 20 to 40 staff. So they're doing a lot with not very much. And it's an ongoing conversation with the staff there, whether they want to, it's different to transition from a city role to a nonprofit role. There's different benefits of being in a nonprofit versus the city. So we're working with staff to just make sure that this transition is as smooth as possible for everybody, right? We want to make sure, nobody's left behind in this transition.
Could you touch on the current renovation efforts at the market and what the timeline looks like for those?
Yeah, everyone's always the most curious about the scaffolding outside. So the clock tower is under construction and has been for a while now. I'm told June. So I'm told that the scaffolding comes down in June. It's done in June. I was also told January. I was also told April. So currently I'm being told June. It turns out that there's only a couple manufacturers of like specialty terracotta, and we're kind of at the whim of those manufacturers to make all of the replacements. So the clock tower should be done by June. The inside renovations, which are focused more on the plumbing and making sure that we have code compliant hand sinks for every vendor, should be done by the end of the year. But the market, I would estimate, needs $40 million worth of work to get up to health and safety code compliance and to really suit the needs of merchants. So I think it's going to be under construction in some way or another for a long time to come.
We have a comment here about the beautiful, big decorative ceiling and how that is both its best asset, but also one of its biggest challenges. Can you talk a little bit more for the group on that?
Sure. So there's this amazing ceiling. It's Guastavino tile. It is actually architectural. Like it's architectural, but also like it's functional. So often I always thought that it was just like a beautiful sort of thing that was stuck on top of the ceiling. It is the ceiling. So it's a thin layer of tile, then concrete, then a thin layer of tile, then concrete. It's amazing. When the market was first designed, they actually considered it unfinished because they would have plastered over the brick ceiling or the tile ceiling to like finish it off. And they were like, well, no, we want this to be welcoming to people. So we don't want it to be stuffy with plaster, which is so funny to think about now because so many people come in to see the ceiling. It is definitely an architectural challenge. Part of our team working with us at Market Ventures includes an architect who has devoted his career to public markets. And so as we're thinking about something like HVAC, we don't want to, we have to think about the integrity of this historic space. And we don't want fence to, be blocking the view of the tile ceiling. It's also a challenge for exhaust. So oftentimes when people do want to open a business at the market, they may want to do some sort of, work that requires a hood. They can't do that because then it would block the ceiling. So thinking about other spaces that we have in the market and how to best accommodate those types of businesses without, competing with the architecture is a huge challenge and one that I am very grateful to have really talented architects thinking about with us.
So as you look ahead, what does success look like for this transition?
Yeah, I think success for the transition is one, having an entity that kind of wakes up every day and is fully focused on the market. The city has so many competing priorities. It has to think about all of your various city services, the 220 other buildings owned by this municipality. It has to think about safety and just so much that happens with the city that it's no surprise that the West Side Market doesn't get the type of attention or integration with other partnerships that it could as its own standalone entity. So to me, it's having this entity in place that can constantly be pushing for the market and really integrating the market in all parts of civic life and thinking about partnerships around like apprenticeships and workforce development and food access and just having the market play a bigger role in our city would be a huge success. Also, just having it be fully staffed and having, somebody who can answer a question about an event at the market would be a huge win. And then finally, seeing the businesses there really thrive. I mean, if the vendors at the market aren't doing well, it's kind of all for naught. Like we have to have these businesses thriving in the market. So seeing places outgrow the market, seeing places kind of continue to expand, seeing businesses be attracted to the market would all be indicators of success. But there will be multiple lists of performance metrics that the new entity is going to have to achieve through its management agreement. So these are just a couple.
And speaking of the new entity, what can you share about the executive director search?
Yeah, so the job, like I said, is available on the mayor's office website. The job description the search is being led by Waverly Partners, who's actually, I think Sarah and Heidi are on this call. So they're doing an amazing job reaching out to people from all over the country in nonprofit sector and corporate sector from other public markets. It's a national search for an executive director for this entity. And I think it's an amazing opportunity for somebody who has, there's so much to a public market. There's partnerships, there's real estate, there's great food, like there's historic preservation. There's so much there. And it's a really interesting opportunity for somebody who is both like a startup opportunity in an established business. So a lot of great opportunity for some creativity there too.
Well, Jessica, we will be sure to share the website. And for all of us on the call, please encourage you to support the work, follow the progress. If you are interested or know someone who would make a great executive director for the new entity, please check out that job search. And Jessica, we thank you for being here today and sharing these next exciting steps for the Westside market.